Thanks again, Tom, for hopping on to another episode of Untapped Stories. I know we were chatting a bit before the show, going through your background. Obviously, great baseball career at Penn. Now you coach high school and you're a parent too. So I think for our audience, just having you on is honestly going to be really impactful. But for all of our guests, I'd love to start way back when. So before you became a parent, before you started coaching high school, maybe even before you played at Penn. What were sports like for you growing up, and how did like your early youth sports days impact the kind of player and coach you became?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I've talked about this before with other people. So I was kind of born into, I think, a unique situation. So I'm one of six kids. I have three older brothers, a direct younger sister, and a younger brother who you know.
Yeah.
And my three older brothers were, I would say, argue probably high level basketball players, general athletes, but basketball is what they gravitated towards. So when I was growing up, it was, you go to the baseball field. My oldest brother played football. We all played soccer. We all played baseball. We all tried everything. I played lacrosse for a period of time. My other brothers played lacrosse. And that was it. So we spent a lot of time outside. We spent a lot of time in the neighborhood. So we had one of those old school neighborhoods where after school, kids would play till about 5:30, go home, eat dinner, do homework, and kind of do it all over again. So I would say I was blessed. I think you're more similar. Like our generation, I think had a little bit more different experience, especially like post school. It just was get outside and kind of rip it for a while, which I thought was great. Didn't know any different. Didn't know, as a young man and a young adult, that it would kind of turn. My kids do play a good amount outside, so I'm proud of that. I also have to kind of go outside with them, so that's a little bit different. But they do, but it's not, you don't see as many kids outside, playing. Hopefully it'll continue to turn, but yeah, that's kind of how it started. We just tried everything, and there's obviously sports you gravitate towards too. Some you're a little bit better at, which obviously is just natural human. If I'm better at something or I gravitate towards it, it's probably what you're going to spend a little bit more time on. But we were a seasonal sports family, and having three older, bigger brothers. I was bad doctor, but he said I was going to be the biggest one in the family, and I ended up being the smallest one in the family. But so my brothers, and I'm not too small, but my brothers are pretty big. And we would just mix it up in the driveway and bring neighbors over, and we would play, soccer to baseball to stickball, football, anything you could really think of. So that was my kind of introduction to sports, and kind of obviously I think having the three older brothers was something that was didn't know that was going to happen, but fortunately I think worked out, and all that good stuff.
Not to jump into a hot topic like too quick, but we actually just wrote a piece on this the other day, the benefit of playing multiple sports. So, and we typically like to ask guests at some point, because a lot of parents and athletes have this question, if you're on the side of specializing early or at any point, or if you're more of a fan of multiple sports for as long as you can. Sounds like you're a fan of multiple sports, but I guess how long did you play those multiple sports before you started really focusing and drilling down on baseball?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. Yeah, I am a fan of multiple sports. So I played basketball all the way through my senior year. I think I was probably arguably a better basketball player until I got to high school, and I was not as good as I used to be. Or, my skill level obviously kind of just hit a little bit of a plateau, and then baseball was kind of my secondary sport. It's the sport I love the most, but, with my brothers being basketball guys, I think, subconsciously it was just more in a gym than I was at a baseball field. You get to a point where you as a young person realize, or start to realize, like, hey, this is something I'm a little bit more passionate about. So I didn't stop playing basketball, but I would say I did a practice. I think I had some good practice, I had some bad practices, candidly, but I would go home, I would shoot, I would dribble. I just wouldn't, I don't think I aspired to be the best dribbler or the best shooter. I kind of knew what my role was. So I did that, and then on top of it, I sprinkled in just kind of general work. And when I would go to my buddy's house on the weekends and lift, and we would hit. And that was the first time that I really probably did more things in the off season as it related to baseball. And then I started to see my body transform. I started to be like, whoa, you can hit the ball, a little bit harder. And I was like, oh, this is kind of neat. So then you kind of started to do more and you started to see the results. And that's and every kid is different, 100%. Every family's different, every situation's different. But I am a big believer that at some point in a young athlete's life, they'll probably get to a point where they're going to kind of push the door open, or they're going to kind of keep that door closed. But I also think to that point is why playing multiple sports. Like for my whole life, was like, I love basketball, and I know you're a hooper. You could put me in a gym in the winter, I could watch basketball forever. I could watch baseball forever as well, but I love hoops. So I played hoops. I loved it. So I never really thought that door was going to ever close. Obviously, as I got older, I knew I wasn't going to play basketball forever, but I didn't think I was going to become a marginal high school basketball player as fast as it did. But it kind of motivated me because I saw the other side of it on the basketball side. Was like, hey man, you are a stock role player. Like, you might get a couple extra buckets this game, but you got to pick, you got to play good defense, you got to make the open shot when you can, but you're not the guy anymore. And then that transformed in baseball, where I had a little bit more success. It wasn't early, but it eventually came around, and then I think it made me subconsciously aware that, some of the guys in the back of the order, or the subs, or the relief pitchers, or the second or third starters, those guys were paramount to, the general success of the team. With my kids specifically, like my son Tommy plays, soccer, baseball, basketball. It's cool. He runs cross country. Anything he wants to do, we're kind of open to. But like cross country, I mean, I can say this, and this is 100% truth. Like, I cried his first cross country meet, not because he won. He finished almost in dead last, and he was crying as he was running, and I was like, I think I am like failing as a parent. This is weird. I never ran. I don't like running, but the next week he wanted to go back. He still didn't do great. The next week he quit in the middle of the race. I'm exposing my 9-year-old, but he quit in the middle of the race. But I said, hey man, like, we're going to sit, wait till the race is over. I don't know if I was like super proud that he quit, but I also was like, but then the last 2 meets, he started to run better, and then by the end of the season, he ran his best race. And then this year, I was like, but if you don't want to go out, didn't seem like this was a sport that you loved. He was like, he woke up one morning, told my wife, was like, I want to do cross country again. I was like, this is awesome. Like, do I think he's going to be a cross country superstar? Absolutely not. But do I think him pushing through running and cross country is going to help him be a baseball player in a weird way? Yeah, it probably will. So I think as long as you can manage it, as long as your kids aren't just completely worn out, and they're not able to do their homework, they're not able to keep up with their social life, they don't want to do anything else, and they just feel like it's a kind of a burden putting a uniform on and going to the field. Yeah, I love mixing it up. I think it's invaluable.
I love that feedback, and I haven't heard that yet. It sounds like, because a lot of parents think when they think of their kid playing multiple sports, they typically think they're going to be the best in each sport if they keep going for as long as they can. Because you could be a really good basketball, baseball, soccer player at 10. That does not happen when you get to high school. At some point you fall back. But do you think those fallbacks actually help you in your main sport in the long run? That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, I really do, and I think obviously the perspective is, and if we had my 10-year-old son on here, he'd probably out me. But it's not all like, our conversations are not all like rose-colored glasses. But what I'm so proud of him in the cross country example is like, hey man, no Grandieri's ever run cross country before. We are not long distance runners. We don't like to run. But not only that, like, you had a really, quote unquote bad experience your first time into it, and you stuck with it. Like, we didn't make you, like, we said, hey, our big rule in our family is, if you start a team and you start a season, you got to finish it. So we're not going once and stopping. So I was like, all right, that you didn't have control of. Like, I was going to get in the car on Sunday afternoons, and we were going to drive to the, cross country meet, whether you fully participated or didn't participate, but like, that was a non-negotiable. But he just kept going. You could tell he didn't love it, but he had practiced last, 2 nights ago. Not one single kid in his 5th grade class at the school, which we gotta work on, is boy or girl is running cross country. So he's the only 5th grader on the whole entire team. And he was like, I had a great time. He said he ran with a 3rd grade boy. Do I think he's going to be the greatest cross country runner? If in 10 years he does it, this would be the craziest thing I've ever. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm super proud of him. And he's probably not going to be the best. But I really personally do believe the early pitfalls. I think there's time to go, but I do think a young athlete facing adversity is key, and not kind of putting them in this bubble.
Sounds like it helped you get to a certain level in high school, and then moving into your college years, you wound up playing at Penn, having a great career, Ivy League Baseball Player of the Year. I guess when you got to Penn, because I think a lot of young athletes and parents want to know this, like, what was that change like for you going from a multi-sport high school athlete, probably having a lot of fun with your buddies, to going to Division I program, super competitive academically and athletically? Like, what should parents and athletes know before getting to a place like that if they want to succeed and come out all right in the long run?
So I always tell the high school kids at Episcopal that I coach, and any kids that I talk to who are getting closer to that age, it's a job. It's not a bad job. Don't get me wrong. You're not going to have fun. You're going to have a ton of fun. You're going to meet buddies. You're going to compete. You're going to do all that stuff. But as you get older, like your coach and your assistant coaches and all these people that put in time, like that is their livelihood. Yeah. So I always say, in high school, fortunately for me, I'm able to coach high school baseball, but I have an outside job. And am I super into it? The kids will tell you that I'm super into it. Do I care a lot? Absolutely. But I don't go home at night if we lose, said game to said team on a Tuesday or a Friday. I don't feel like my life, is going to kind of upend and I'm going to have to do all these different things. So the human element is you got to respect the coaches at all times, but there is just a little bit more at stake for everybody. The one thing I did eventually like is, I didn't do well at it, and then it's kind of time management. So I never had as much time as I had in college. So time management is key. Once I figured out that using it properly, I think my career kind of started to, make bigger jumps forward.
Okay.
So I would lift a little bit better. I would go out a little bit less. I would hit a little bit more. I would do more, throwing and different things like that. But when I first got there, it was like, all right, we got practice, and then we got, I was good about going to class. I will say that. But after that, you did it too. You have a lot of time to do a lot of things that could be counterproductive. And don't get me wrong, full transparency, I did a ton of things that were counterproductive at times. But I think once you kind of realize what that looks like, and you use it well, and it's kind of the same example I had with high school, was like when I started lifting a little bit more and hitting a little bit more, you just start to feel better. So when I started to work out a little bit more, started to get a little bit more focused, you're like, all right, man, like there's probably a little bit more in there in the tank. You could become a little bit better of a baseball player. And I'm a competitive guy, and eventually, it got to a point where it was fun to get after a little bit, and it was fun to challenge your buddies and find the 4, 5, 6 guys on the team that were taking it a little bit more serious, or just whatever. They had the same schedule as you, and you would go do different things with them, and that was good. So the community aspect and the team aspect. So finding it outside of big practice, full team practice, and then finding the smaller groups to work out with was super helpful.
What about at Penn? Was there anybody in particular, maybe one of those 4 or 6 guys, or even like a coach, head coach, assistant coach, that really had an impact on you when it came to helping you become a better player, but also just improving as a person and doing well overall at Penn?
Yeah, so there were 2 guys, and they'll get so 2 players in particular. There's probably more, and then 1 coach. I don't want to sing on anybody, but I'll talk about one just for the sake of time and everything else. But so the 2 guys, so William Bobo Gordon, who's one of my still one of my best buddies from college. So he was from Atlanta, totally different backgrounds. Southern guy, East Coast guy. He was coming to the East Coast, so I feel like we kind of. I liked his lifestyle. He seemed to, he was super competitive, but he kind of had a little bit more laid back look on it. They played big time baseball in Atlanta, so like he was used to big time competition. I think I helped him out with like how this is how like East Coast people act, and they loved the Bobo from Atlanta, so that was awesome. And we never lived together, so I think that also helps. So like. Find out what he's doing, do some extra stuff, and socially we were aligned. We'd go out together and do all that stuff. And then Will Davis is another Atlanta guy who is one of the funniest guys I've ever met. But underneath that, he was a guy who wanted to get better. He wanted to be really good. He got sidelined with some knee injuries. He was a catcher, but he was a left-handed hitter. He had a ton of power. I didn't really have a ton of power. So I always remember like watching his swing, and he kind of, I don't know if it was the Atlanta effect, but it was a laid back, but it's like laid back, but there was something behind it. You know what I mean? They were there to try to win. So those two guys helped me a lot in college, and they were always kind of down to do extra hitting, which I think was the kind of thing that for all of us that we all kind of hit pretty well. And then Coach Yurkow, who at the time was an assistant coach, now who's the head coach, who's been doing awesome. Penn's been they've been killing it recently, which has been amazing to watch. So Yerk was in college was awesome for me. Like I remember after my junior year, I pitched and hit, and I pitched well in high school and I pitched decent in college, but I hit a wall where I just couldn't really get a lot of people out. But I was willing to pitch and do all that stuff. So they brought me into the end of the season meeting, and they're like, hey, like, we're thinking about like kind of just like shelving you on the pitching side, like, thanks for your service. And I was like, oh, no problem. Like it was a good run. But at the end of the meeting, and this is why, like, I mean, to exactly why you probably started this company is like, there's something about coaching, like, your buddy can tell you you're pretty good, your dad or mom, they always have your back, but you're like, I don't know, like, I see you, your buddy's telling you that because, like, what, peer guy that your buddy's with is going to tell you that you suck, you know what I mean, like, that you stink. So, but I distinctly remember, and I was totally taken back. I thought I was good, right, but I didn't think I was, whatever. So he was like, hey, man, if you take this extra time that you have now, that you don't have to think about pitching, you don't have to do all this other stuff, and he's like, and you get after it, he's like, you can win, I swear, he said, you can win Ivy League Player of the Year. And I was like, I was like, hey, man, I don't really think so, but I will say, I came out of that meeting, and I was like, that's a little bit different, and then we talked after that, and I was like, was that, like, in him and I had a great relationship, still really good buddies now. I was like, was that just, like, coach talk? He's like, no, man, like, you can do it. Like, I think you're kind of just dancing around it. If you get after it, if you stop going out as much, if you focus on this, like, you got a shot at it. It worked out. I mean, I can't say, and it probably sounds like it's a made-up story because it eventually happened, but I remember that meeting. It was this little office in Holland, and it was like sitting there, it's 4 coaches, me, and he's like, you can do this. And I was like, oh, man. So it was a watershed moment, if you will. But hey, when people believe in you, man, and you don't want to let people down, and they invest a lot of time in you, the crazier things have happened. So he's always been a mentor to me. He's a friend now. He's a hell of a baseball coach. I couldn't be more proud where he's taking Penn. So he's aces in my book.
That's amazing. We've heard similar stories, maybe not at the same time in life, but it seems like every amazing athlete, it's typically not a parent. It's typically a coach, mentor, private trainer, whatever it is. They instill so much confidence in a young kid. But again, middle school, high school, college doesn't make a difference. But you have to have somebody like that who believes in you and probably can see past what you think your potential is. Like there was a swimmer we had on, Olympic swimmer. She met with an Olympic swimming coach when she was 13. Was a good swimmer at that point. Wound up working with this coach for 6 years, and then she won gold in Rio and silver in Tokyo. But it's like, without that coach, does she really get to that point? So somebody like that, it's crazy to say, but they can have a big impact on your life. And it sounds like that happened with you, the Penn coach. So
for sure.
It's super cool. So I guess moving beyond college, like you mentioned now, you coach high school. You've probably seen a lot of kids, have done a lot of training, both for your team, off the field or off-season stuff. But when you're looking at young kids nowadays, because I think a lot of parents know that they want their kids to play on, maybe it's a big-time travel team, a big-time high school team, or even just make the team. But as a high school coach, what do you look at in young kids when you're going to either recruit them or you want them to become on your team? Is it purely skills at this point, and you can work with the kid on the personal mental side, or is it a combo of both when you're thinking about kids that are really 11, 12, 13? Like, how do we evaluate kids, and what should athletes work towards becoming if they want to play on a good team?
Yeah, it's obviously a great question and somewhat of a loaded one, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's the Jimmies and the Joes and not the X's and the O's. I mean, that's an old time saying. But I do think it just happens at different points for different people. I think size obviously matters big time. I was fortunately a little bit bigger, and I was a little bit bigger early. So
even in baseball, you think?
I do definitely less in basketball, definitely less in football for sure. So yeah, but I would say in the early success where you say, like, I'm the best 10-year-old or I'm the best 12-year-old, typically, I mean, you'll see it, but typically, even in baseball, it's usually the ones that are a little bit bigger. And that doesn't mean that they can't continue to be the best ones, but I think casting off, yourself or casting off your kid at that age, I don't think is right. What we try to see is, well, coachability is one thing. So, and it can come in a various ways. So, there's some kids that are great with eye contact, great with their manners. So that obviously helps. I think that carries you through life outside of baseball. But then there's also 12-year-old kids who are super nervous and super shy, and their personality is not. So you don't say, well, Gene didn't make eye contact with me. Gene's he's disrespectful. Yeah. That's a little harsh. I mean, we can all try to it, and eventually, if if I go out of my way to kind of try to make them feel more comfortable, their shell will start to open up. Coachability is a big thing. I think just willing to try different things. I think that's a little bit lost. When we work out kids, I'll just say, hey, before they do it, just say, hey, just try to hit the ball back up the middle. Just try to hit the ball back up the middle. Just try to hit the ball back up the middle. Do I want them to hit the ball back up the middle the whole time? Probably not. Do I expect them to do it? Probably not. But do I like when I see a kid, a young kid, get up there and you can see his brain working, where it's like, all right, coach told me something, I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to remember to, I'm going to try to do it. So it's just these little subtle things. And then skill work, I'll ask the kids what they do. I think the big thing now is, I think in lacrosse, the phrase is it's like helmet recruiting. So if you go to these big-time lacrosse schools, you'll go to these workouts, and it's like if you play for XYZ school that has a great helmet, you jump to the top of the list. I think that exists in baseball, summer ball, but if you're not playing a lot in summer ball, or you're the 9th, 10th best baseball player on that particular team, sure, the notoriety of 7, 8, 9, there's definitely an argument that can get you in a better place because there's just it's better quality. But I think I would recommend trying to do as much to try to get yourself better personally than try to just get on said team so that you can say you're on said team. Like I said, it's really complicated. It's kind of hard to unpack at I think a holistic level. I do think it is rather specific. But as it looks, I mean, they all come in all different shapes and sizes. We've had kids that, who've, mightily struggled in their freshman and sophomore year, and they came to the conclusion that, hey, I'm going to work at this, I'm going to focus a little bit more on this, and their careers flourished over the next 2 years. We've had kids who have, really shined their freshman and sophomore year, and then the outside pressures got to them, and they've really struggled their junior and senior years. Which to me obviously hurts more because, I want them to do better. Obviously, just it would help everybody. But personally, that's a really hard time to struggle because that's when people are probably rooting against you a little bit if you're this young hotshot, and then there's all these outside pressures. So I think it's just finding the balance and just realizing it's not going to happen in a week. You could probably argue the things you were probably really good at in high school, you probably stayed pretty good at, but there's probably little things that you picked up in college that you probably never thought about. You never even thought that this was important. You never even thought the coach would, care about this. So I'm always just trying to give these guys a little bit of kernels just to be hey, start to think about this. I have a quick example, Alex Barrist, who's a kid that I coached, to your earlier point about size. He's one of the smallest kids that I've ever coached. I think in high school he weighed 120. I mean, he'll probably laugh at this and probably roll his eyes. I think his senior year he probably weighed 120 pounds.
Oh my God!
He started as a freshman for us. He played all 4 years. He's one of many kids, but he just finished his freshman year at Lafayette. He got second team All Patriot, and I would tell him incessantly. I said, "Hey man, I was fortunate that I'm a little bit taller than you. I'm a little bit bigger, but I still had a bunt in college. The 4-hole hitter in college had a bunt. I said, if you don't think you're going to have to be a great bunter, not only just in general, but clearly at your size, you can fight this. You can fight me on this, but this is something that I'm just telling you, you got to take it in. So we fought about it. Not, obviously not physically. But we talked about it. He was a fine bunter, but he was not a good bunter. His freshman year at Lafayette, I think he led the Patriot League in sacrifice bunts. I didn't have a chance to talk to his coach. I'd have to argue his favorability with the coach went to an all-time high because that was something that he could be like, this guy can do in a pinch. And then eventually he bunted so well that he kind of kept his job in the starting lineup. And then as baseball games play out, if there's a runner on third base with less than one out, you're not going to sacrifice bunt, so you're going to get a chance to hit, and he picked up a lot of hits. But it was a tool that you had. And people say, like, we don't bunt anymore, and it's like, okay, that's fine. Like, you can, but I will promise you at some point somebody is going to probably ask you to do that. And if you can't do it, a coach, unfortunately, it allows more guys to get in there. So it's not probably a recruiting thing when we work them out to see how they bunt necessarily. But I think it's the willingness to, and when they're 12, 13 years old, you're kind of taking a shot in the dark that they're going to be able to do that. But there is a little bit about you throw these things out there like, try this, put your hands here. If there's just, hey, yeah, like coach told me to do this the old school way, like I'm going to try this. I changed my batting, I tell the kids all the time, I changed my batting stance, hands, I would say, which I don't aspire to do this to any of the kids now, but probably weekly, if not every other week in college. Jeez. And half the reason I did it was because the coach suggested it, and you know who puts the lineup together? The coach. True. So if I tried it and I didn't do well, I wouldn't go to him and say, you messed me up, this is the reason I can't hit. But I think subconsciously or in the back of his mind was like, hey, Tom was willing to do this, it didn't work out. He seems coachable. I'm not going to cast him off and put him on the bench because he had one bad day. So I think there's just a lot more human element to it than just you can hit the ball this far, you can hit the ball this hard, you can do all these different things. It's just, I think it's much more holistic than I think people give it credit for.
No, it's a really good point. And it comes back to me, I guess a funny side story for when I was younger, but the coachability aspect, I always remember playing baseball growing up. A certain group of kids taking batting practice from especially parents, coaches, dads, who would throw, and they would always wait for the perfect pitch, and they'd make these older guys throw like 10 pitches for the perfect meatball. And I'm like, dude, there's like these guys are here volunteering. Like if you can't just give a little bit of effort and be coachable, like be a part of the team, be a part of the practice, not waste time. I always hated those kids for doing that. And it's a small thing, but it's probably similar. Like if you're coaching and you can't adjust your hands to try it or try to hit to right field if a coach tells you that, then it's like, can you really trust this kid when it comes down to like being on a team? Because they might not be the best player, but if you need them to bunt, like, are they going to do it? So
yeah, and I say like if we work you out and you swing through balls 4 out of 6 times, it's perfectly fine. I struck out 1,000,000 times, I swung through 1,000,000 pitches. It's just how you react, and it's hey, Gene, like I noticed 4 of the 6 pitches you didn't hit. I think you're stepping out, or you're stepping in, or you're cutting yourself off, or your hands are this, or that. Just say, hey, would you be like, try to lower your hands into the slot, or get them here and like directly to the baseball. All I can say is if I struck out in batting practice, or I whiffed 4 out of 6 times, I would hope that you would be willing to. I'm not telling you you're the worst baseball player, but you'd be open to suggestions. So to me, that's a big deal. And we've been very fortunate at Episcopal. The kids are extremely coachable. It's a great group to be around. And I think as you kind of just lower like every ground ball expectation, every fly ball being perfect, it allows people to kind of just be like, all right, I can listen to what's going on. So we just do mass ground balls, mass fly balls. Like it's not, at some point we're going to get a little bit more, serious, and we want to make sure we're trying to make the plays, or we're giving it full effort. But for the most part, it's like seeing where the hop is, where your body is, making sure your hips are in a line, all those different things. And if you're just beating kids down all the time, or you feel like every one of those fly balls or ground balls is life or death, you're not going to get the best out of them. So that's why getting to know kids, seeing them more often than just once. That's what we try to do. Is we try to do it in 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and then you get a better sense of what it is. Go out to see them at their games in a comfortable spot. And at the end of the day, to the parents, I love my kids. I totally get it. Every kid is the best kid. No, I'm just kidding. But every kid. But it's just go out and play and have fun. And I think the underlying thing is being a good teammate. There's a lot to be said about. If you're in the dugout and all the kids are hanging around your kid, or you're hanging around all the other kids, that will bode well for you, not only in baseball, basketball, whatever sport it is, but life. Like if you're somebody that, where you got good energy and people want to be around you. So there's just little things we look at. Like you go to a game and the kid's by himself, and it's like, all right, you can argue, he's pretty serious, he's concentrating. Totally get that. The beauty of baseball for me is you can lock in, but you also can have a great time with your buddies. You can chew sunflower seeds. You can chew gum. Like that's why baseball is beautiful for me.
Yep.
I like to chat. So there's times to lock in. There's times to kind of be a teammate. There's times to cheer. So we look at all that stuff, and it doesn't mean at 12 years old if you don't have it, you're never going to have it.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't mean if you're really good at it at 15 that it's going to carry you through. But it's just general considerations.
I think parents would love to hear that. And what about, I think the next question I had kind of is in line with what you mentioned for, it wasn't one particular athlete, but if you are that kid who maybe is good 8th grade, freshman year, sophomore year, but you start to let some of the pressure get to you. I think a lot of parents and athletes nowadays want to know about the mental side of the game because you can train skills all day. But when it comes to, especially in today's culture, like when you're playing all year round, there's more access to college recruiting. Parents are trying to always put their kids out there. How do you help kids face that pressure and either find a balance and overcome it, or really just in the face of adversity continue to play well and not get worried by who's watching what they're doing and what the pressures are?
I think I've done well in spots of that, and I think I've done poorly in spots in that. And that to me is way more important than the other side. Yeah, the skills and drills. Sure. There's probably a point in high school. I ended up being 200 and a good 225 pounds in college. I was pretty strong, but in high school I was bigger, but I was probably 170. So I was a different athlete at those points. So those are things that you can train. You can lift, you can work out, you can take more ground balls. The mental side of it, it's a huge deal. I think being honest with them is a starting point. So the one thing I hope that the kids feel like, you can't share everything, but being honest and transparent. Like when I mess up, I let them know not only individually, but I let them know publicly in front of the team. Like I mess up all the time. I think we don't have the kids stand up and say, "Hey, coach, I missed a sign here," and ball. Like we don't. That's not like how it works. Is I'm an adult. I can speak to that. But I've missed the mark on that plenty of times, and I think I've hit the mark plenty of times. And you definitely you try to obviously kind of shorten that gap or close that gap between the misses and the hits. But it's just being like, hey man, like it is what it is. Like it's sports are hard. Like you're playing against somebody else. They're trying really hard. You're trying really hard. You don't know what, in baseball particularly, like you don't know what pitch they're throwing. You don't know if he got this. You don't know if they stole a sign. You don't know if he had a bad day. If he failed his physics test, an hour before. You don't know if your brother is broke up with his girlfriend and it's just heck at home and like people are just upset. Like, and I think it's like having grace in realizing that you have bad days. Like people have bad days. I understand what it feels like to struggle. Like, people, you'll start with this and say, hey, you did this, and I don't really like to talk about all this stuff. And yeah, I surely had some success, but I had some bad days too. And I had coaches that took time to, pour into me or invest into me or just say, hey man, like, yeah, you had a bad day, but like, you can't make 2 bad days or 3 bad days in a row. Just nip it in the bud. And just telling the kids like, hey, I had a bad day. I think when I grew up, there were some coaches who the expectations of being not perfect, but like I'm like, man, like that drill wasn't bad. Like, that basketball drill we ran, that shell drill, like, yeah, like we missed a couple box outs, but like, I don't know, the other guy was trying to get around me and like, he's athletic and got a rebound. Like, it wasn't because I was just like stood there and did that. So I think having moments of just being completely real with them and saying, hey, like, it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay. It's more than okay, and it's just let's try to make the next one. Let's try to make the next one, and personally, as we do with Episcopal, I ask other coaches, mostly high school coaches, because it's not really comparable to do younger and older, but we don't really share statistics throughout the year. The kids get their own stats.
Okay.
They can see it on the Game Changer app, which everybody uses. I don't like to put it out. We did it once last year where I shared it to the team in the middle of the season just to be like, hey, because kids will say, hey, I should be playing, and it's like, here are your numbers, and this is your numbers in comparison to everybody else. So, but there's other coaches that put stats out every day, like here it is, here it is, here it is. To me, that's their culture, and it could totally work. So I think that's the other thing to your point is knowing your kid, knowing what might be a good environment for them, which is really hard. I think for us is, let's just focus on getting better day after day after day. if you hit a ball really hard and you go 0 for 1, it's an 0 for 1. But like, I'm not going to forget that you hit the ball really hard, right? Like, if I make a mistake and I think they're going to throw a breaking ball and I tell you to steal and they throw a pitch out, like, I'm not going to blame that on you. That's on me. Like, I will tell them in the game I messed up there. If I send you from third base and you get thrown out by 15 feet, that's on me. Like, I'm not, you're slow. Like, that's on me. So I think there is the human touch that I try, and I definitely fall short plenty of times. I'm not going to hide behind that. But I am consciously trying to levelize with the kids and just make them realize that I'm going to make mistakes, you're going to make mistakes, and more importantly, the other team's going to make mistakes. So be ready to capitalize on those so their mistakes hurt more than ours. Because even if it's not always success, if our mistake is just one little one, but they have these big ones, I'll take the little ones and chalk them up, and hopefully we take advantage of the bigger one. So it's kind of just trying to flip it a little bit, and you gotta play a little bit of mental game with yourself, and that's how it goes.
Yeah, and not get too bogged down by the mistakes. That's the biggest thing. I think kids nowadays with social media, they see peers, they see pro players doing so well. Every clip you see is a positive highlight, obviously, but that's just not the way sports go. Like, you're gonna mess up. The point is to fail, but the point is to learn from your failures, because they're going to happen, and then become better for it. But I feel like a lot of young kids just don't get that because they didn't grow up in the same era we did where you got to fail. Nowadays, kids feel like they can't fail, and that's a horrible spot to be in. Even if you have a bad day in front of a recruiter, you have a bad day and against a really good team, like especially in baseball, there's always tomorrow.
Yeah, and a lot of our kids that are getting recruited now, like, I'll talk to the coaches if I have a chance to talk to them, and I'll be like, what game were you at? And then they'll say, I'm at XYZ game, and I'll look up the box score, and it's like, they went like 1 for 3 with like a blub. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And it's just, they saw how they swung the bat, you know what I mean? How they took a pitch, how they competed in the box, how they made one play, how they did a cutoff, how they took a secondary lead. It's like, and that's the hard thing is, the little details end up being the differentiator as you get older. Everybody as you get older is pretty good. Like, some are better than others, clearly, but the majority of people are kind of in this box, and then it's like, who does the little things that, Coach Joe told me 12 years ago when I was 10 years old that was going to be important, and then to the point of just being an athlete and maybe a competitor and just whatever environment you're in is like, do you kind of grab that bull by the horns and lean into it, or do you kind of keep resisting it? And to me, I tell the kids, if you resist it, that's fine. I'm not going to like spend an hour trying to tell you not to resist it. But I think the thing that they're not thinking about is it adds so much pressure to being really good at the other stuff in a sport where it's really hard to be really, really good all the time. So it's like, if you don't want to be a good bunter and you're not a good base runner, then you have to hit a lot of doubles. But doubles are really hard to come by because it's really hard to hit, and then the fielders are really good in high school and college baseball. So, but if you can, in high school, if you can get on base a lot and you're a good base runner, you can instantly turn a single into a double. And I just think you put so much pressure on like these huge impact points, where instead of getting to the box and it's like, I can make an impact by, hitting the ball the other way, or, jumping on a first pitch pass ball and hitting it back it up the box and getting to first base, and having, the first baseman hold the runner at first base for the left-handed guy through, so you have a bigger hole to hit on the right side. So we just talk about, I just try to bring up things that help alleviate all the stresses that come, in this case, that come with baseball. And on a lot of times it's the hitting side, where it's like you look out onto the field. I mean, you probably haven't played baseball in a while, but you used to get in the batter's box and you like look out there too long. You're like, where am I going to hit this? Well, and where am I going to hit it? What is it going to throw? Am I going to hit it hard enough to get on base? Am I going to run fast enough where they're not going to throw me out? So it's like, hey, like if we can add some things that help alleviate these hurdles, these roadblocks, let's talk about it. Like, and don't, like, it might not come your freshman year where you're like, you're the man, you did it all the time. So it's like, you got to take your humble pie. It's usually, I think freshman year is a great year where it's like, whew, this is a little bit different.
Yeah.
And then guys take these big leaps their sophomore years and junior years and senior years, and it kind of all, usually tends to all work out.
I always remember that for basketball. There's a kid on my AAU team who got recruited to play at Villanova. Jay Wright was there to watch one of our AAU games, and he had a horrible game. I think he probably went like 1 for 20. But he was like, in a good way, dogging on defense, like full court pressure, never missed a beat, had a good mentality the entire game. And I think Jay Wright said to our AAU coach after the game, like, I love that kid. Could care less that he shot 5%. It's just like, he'll make those shots. His mentality and effort never stopped. And that's, I mean, you have to have the talent, but I think coaches really do pick up on that stuff. But it's just hard as a kid. Like, you know, if you go 5% or 1 for 20, naturally you just want to hang your head, but you can't. Someone's always watching. So,
for sure. Yeah. And it's like, yeah. And I had a cool moments with kids. And I think when I talk to other moms and dads, like, you know, and my son Tommy, my oldest one, he's 10. But it was cool, like basketball. He loves playing basketball. He doesn't play a ton. Like, he's not in the AAU circuit or anything like that. But he started, like, I would call it AAU light, so just like kind of local tournaments against AAU teams, and they would get their doors blown off. And he would, you know, he's a little guy, so he played point guard, and, you know, he'd try his move that he could do, and, like, you know, he gets stripped like a crossover, and then, you know, the next time he tried an in and out, it would work, and then he would try the in and out again because it worked, and then he'd get stripped. And I'd be like, this is awesome. But, like, instead of, like, I wouldn't go home. And I will say, I've gone home in the car, and I'm not perfect by any stretch. But, like, I wasn't like, hey, man, like, I was like, this is great. Like, this is what it looks like. And you did fine. You kept running back after they stole it. You know, they would make the layups because they would blow by him. But, like, you didn't quit. You didn't stay in half court.
Yeah.
But I will say, a cool moment was, like, he was like, hey, after we got home from one of the games, he was like, do you want to can we go in the driveway and dribble? And I was like, yeah.
There we go.
So they played that team, like, 2 weeks later. He still turned the ball over, but, like, he turned it over a lot less. You know, they were going for his, like, in and out, and he would cross them. So I was like, this is, and once again, I'm not perfect. I've definitely had moments where I get upset about things I shouldn't get upset about. But the reality is, like, every year is so much different than the other. Like, he hasn't even really grown much, but just, like, mentally, you know, how he plays a baseball game. Like, you can tell he's just, like, thinking a little bit more this year. Like, basketball, you can tell, hey, I got to work on my free throw shooting because I didn't shoot that well. So it's like, we'll go out in the driveway and do it. So it's like, I think just naturally letting that happen. And I will say a call to arms, which is a little bit hard. I think parents have to take a little bit more of an active role, given what we talked about all the way in the beginning is, like, I can't necessarily get my son home from school and expect this plethora of kids to run outside and play with each other.
Yeah.
So I think parents, don't get me wrong, I do think it is the kids' job, or they should be able to do this. But I think just being outside and just being like, hey, I'm around. I'm not going to do everything for you, but, like, the hurdle of, like, well, I'm not a self-starter yet where I'm going to go shoot hoops in the driveway by myself. But if my dad or mom is out there, or uncle or brother, brothers are helpful. And that's what I said. Like, I had 3 older brothers. They were outside all the time. Tommy is one boy and then 2 younger sisters, and, you know, hopefully in 3 years the 7-year-old girl Elle will be out there beating him up and all that stuff, which will probably happen, but it's not happening now, and it hasn't happened for his first, you know, 5 years of quote unquote playing sports.
Yep.
So I think the call to action would be just go outside. Like, you know, if you got to make a phone call, you know, step away. Obviously, if you have to work, that's the most important thing. But if you are home, I think getting outside with them and playing with them, and not playing with them in the sense of, like, we're going to do, like, you know, don't get me wrong, we do it, like, once a week where I'll be like, hey, like, you got to probably work on your ball handling a little bit and, like, pound the ball into the ground. But it's more like having a ball in your hand and just feeling the ball and just, you know, doing that stuff. Like field hockey, I mean, I can ramble on. My middle daughter's playing field hockey. I don't know a thing about field hockey. I think it's a great sport. I worked my work study in college. I used to work the women's games. They were awesome. They're super good athletes, super aggressive. Don't know the first thing about it. I called the Episcopal coach. I sent him an email, and I said, hey, like, totally don't know what's going on. I showed up to one of their games. I stood there and watched it. I know what sports look like. And I was like, hey, do you have any, like, skills or drills that I can do with my daughter at home that might help her just a little bit? And he was like, Tom, honestly, what my dad played baseball at Westchester. He would get a glove on. He would throw the field hockey. He would roll the field hockey ball on the ground. And, you know, my sister would stop it. She would whack it back to my dad. My dad would field it like an infielder with his baseball glove, and they would just do that all over again. I was like, you know what? I can do that. I can do it. So, you know what we did? I said, Elle, you want to go outside? First day, she said no. I said, no big deal. Second day, I said, hey, do you want to go outside and whack the ball around? Whack the ball around. You know, and I'll just keep trying to do it. I don't think there's a substitute for just getting work in. It doesn't always have to be, I'm getting lessons from the best, you know, infield coach. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't hurt by any stretch of the imagination, but it doesn't hurt to just go out in your driveway and just bang jump shots and just try a different move, try a floater, try a, you know, reverse dribble into a shot. Maybe shots you'll never take, but, like, Who knows? So I would try to go outside as much as possible if you can be present for it. I know everybody's so busy, but I don't think you have to go all the way, all over the time, all over the place all the time to get what you need. I think you can use that as a supplement.
That's really cool. And I feel like a lot of parents nowadays, they want that environment for their kids, but it's just not the world we're living in. So if you expect your kid to walk outside and play with 15 kids, just not possible. So igniting it, but again, not being like a drill master, I think is the balance. And for parents maybe that have kids that are a little bit older, maybe high school, wanted to go play in college, how can parents nowadays support their kids? And also I think for parents, because they probably know that when they're younger, you can do a little more controlling with the teams. Like you can pick a travel team, you know who your kids are playing with. Once you get to high school, once you decide if it's public, private, whatever it is, like they're there and you don't really have any control over the team. What would your one piece of advice be to parents who want to play like high level sports, whether it's baseball or whatever, but when they get to those high school, college teams, what should parents understand that at that point their role is different and they have to do something that, they're probably not used to?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think my first pass at the question would be open to like direct suggestions, direct advice. There's just and it's hard because it's like, hey, I think instead of playing for XYZ travel team, I think they should spend the next year just trying to build their body. Like build their body up, play local summer ball, maybe pop into a tournament or two. And, they might say, hey, well, and I think the biggest caution is, and once again, I don't have a son in this age, but I think the biggest fear is if I take one summer off, I'm off the team.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, well, that's okay. I can sympathize with that. I don't know if you ultimately make whatever decision you want, but I do think there's a part of me is like, well, if you take this summer off, you actually gain 10 pounds, or you're just more physical, and you should be on that team. Like you were on the team when you were less physical.
Yeah.
You should make the team when you're more physical. But it doesn't always work out that way, and you'll hear the other thing, and it's like we don't have any slots left, and this person is paid up through the next 3 years. So there's definitely, I think, the fear of the unknown, I think, is real. I think when I talk to our guys, or I know when I talk to our guys, especially when they're older, I don't have a ton of conversations like this specific, but I'll just ask them about their summer baseball experience, because that's the big thing for me. And they'll say, hey, I think, I really like this, I don't really like that. And I ask them the same thing about our practices. So, like, there's stuff that I do that they definitely don't like, and, I try to, I'm not going to totally compromise on all of it, because I think it's important. But, we do a lot less stuff than we used to do, because the kids are like, hey, we'll take this seriously, and we'll knock it out. As it relates to the college recruiting process, completely different than it was when we were in college, is it's really hard to get recruited, especially at the D1 level. It's really hard to get recruited in general, because the timeline is so much further down the road, because the Division III schools are waiting for the Division I fallouts or the junior college kids.
Yeah.
So it's, and I know you've probably had this conversation with people at length, and I'll candidly say to people is like, I'm not an expert in this, but I can point you to the direction of people who are a little bit more. So I think, like anything else, I think it's just using your resources. Like there's definitely parents that don't like me though, so and that's fine, and I totally get it. So they're probably not going to come to me and say, hey Tom, who would you put me in contact with? Because if I don't like someone, I'm not probably going to go to them to ask for a reference. Yeah, but I will say, at a like a face level is, I coach, all my other coaches that coach, we want you to have, whether it's a great high school experience, whether it's a great high school college combination experience, we're there to have, hopefully make you have a good experience. If I can put you in contact with somebody who's a little bit better in that space, I'll do it. But I think, like, when I talk to the people or guys on our team and the parents on our team and just say, hey, this is probably where you're going to fall, there's definitely this resistance of like, well, there's somebody else that's going to tell them that they're going to go to a better place, right? Because that person instantly, if I say, hey, Gene, you are, this level baseball player, but your parents and you think you're that level baseball player, and you go to Bill, and Bill's like, oh, Tom's an idiot, you're D1, you're going to be like, all right, we're going with Bill. Like, we like Bill. And then you're like, all right, like, well, Bill doesn't, And for me, I don't know everything, so I don't know what you're going to be, as you get older. But I'm with you a lot. Like we're with each other 6 days a week for 3.5 months. That's a lot of time. Like it's a lot of time. It's 2 hours a day at a minimum.
Yep.
Weekends are longer. I see how you practice. I see all these different things. Doesn't mean it's 100%, but I think saying, hey, this is what you look like now, start there, and then if you get all these, these gains, this could look a little bit different for you. And the one thing with baseball, not a huge fan of it, it has become very metrics based, so it's numbers.
Yeah.
It's you throw this hard, you hit the ball this hard, you do all those different things. So there's the element of chasing that, which once again, I didn't have to live through that. I don't even know what my exit velocity was once in my entire life. I don't even know if outside of Florida and when I pitched like as a sophomore when we had kids that were like really guys that were humping it up, where like a scout would come to the game, where I don't even really know what I threw in high school velocity wise. Kids now in like 5th, 6th grade know how hard they throw. Like,
Yeah.
So for me, and probably for you too, is like there's metrics that like your release point, your release time, or whatever it was. I didn't have to worry about that. It was like, can you get a lot of hits? Can you run pretty fast? And are you a good enough baseball player? And when you play the outfield, if you catch the ball and a guy tags up from third base, do you have a good enough arm that you can throw somebody out? It wasn't like I throw the ball this. It was just like I can do this, I can do that.
Yeah.
I need to work on this, I need to work on that. So there's just so much out there, and I think, I believe, because I feel it too at times, is I think parents feel this pressure, an insane amount of pressure, that they know where it comes from, they don't really know how to alleviate it, and they don't have a lot of resources that I think they fully trust.
Yeah.
And then what happens is it just like starts to build and build and build, and then it builds up through the parents, and then it just funnels down to the kids. So that car ride home, used to be, hey, like, good game, bad game, whatever, you did this, you did that. Now it's like, Billy hit the ball 100 today, Billy threw the ball 100 today, you threw 80, you're never going to do this. And it's like, sure, like, those things are still the facts. They were the facts when we played. Like, I knew every kid that threw harder than me, but, like, I wasn't, like, threw 12 miles per hour harder than me. I was like, that ball just looked like it was much harder. And, he hit two kids today, and those kids got really hurt. I hit kids, and they don't get hurt. They just go to first. They go to first base. So I think there's a lot of pressure, and I don't begrudge parents. I'm a parent myself. I'm just not that age yet. But I think it's bubbling and it's bubbling and it's bubbling, and there's no outlet for it. And the kids feel it. Like they feel it. They feel it. So to a previous conversation is, we talk about it a lot. Like, I understand the pressure. I understand the college pressure. I understand the you're trying to get on the field pressure. It's like, let's just take a deep breath. Let's just keep working at the things that we can work at. Listen to the things that we can listen to. Try to work on the things that need to be done, and just keep trust the process. That's not a good slogan anymore because of the Sixers, but trust the process. Like, there's something to be said about kind of just putting one foot in front of the other.
Yep.
And as much as Gene, you and I've gotten to know each other, like, if we played together and you were better than I was, I think inherently I would try to get as good as you. But I wouldn't be like, well, Gene, he does this and he goes to this trainer. It's like, Gene probably is just, at this point in his life, is better than I am. And it's like, what is Gene doing? I would just ask Gene, like, what are you doing? Like, do you? It's like, yeah, like, you could just be like, I don't do anything. Like, I just unfortunately gifted that I go home, I go to practice, I go to bed. It's like, all right, well, Gene's probably going to be better than me for a while. But if you're like, hey, man, I go home and I shoot 500 free throws, and it's like, all right, well, that makes sense that Gene shoots 92% from the free throw line. Like, I don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, so instead of just like going on Twitter and Instagram, and it's just like, these 5 kids from Pennsylvania are the best kids in the world. It's like, you're not that probably ever.
Yep.
And it's like, but you can still get better, and you can do it in a slow, methodical way.
Yep.
I think it's the race to get it, these big gains in this small period of time. And if it doesn't happen, it's like, what is wrong with you? And it's like, the reality is, like, nothing's probably wrong with you.
Yeah. I like those 2 points you mentioned there. Well, the support for the parents. I think especially nowadays, I go harping on it again, but social media, parents know way too much about even like other kids and their teams, and there's so many options nowadays. It's probably paralysis by analysis, which causes stress, and then the kids get kind of worked up too. I like the point that you made in the beginning, though, because I never would have thought about that. But if you're on a good travel team, you're a solid player, but maybe it's not the best thing for you. Like, it's what everyone else is doing in your age group. But if, a high-level coach like yourself goes and talks to a kid and says, hey, if you take the summer off between your freshman and sophomore year, you don't play travel ball, you stay home, but you do these 3 things, you could wind up by your sophomore year being a lot better. I don't think parents, they don't want to hear that, but nowadays that's such an out-of-the-box idea that as you're getting better, you don't play on travel teams, you don't jet around the country. I think there's a big kind of like misconception nowadays that people have to play travel. And it's good, it's high-level competition, but there are other things that athletes do, and like plenty of great athletes have played 3 sports all the way through their senior year in high school, never even played AAU or travel, and they wound up at this level. So I think just listening to that feedback, whether it's right or wrong for you, would be helpful for parents and athletes, and not just going with the flow nowadays of doing whatever else your friends do.
Right, and once again, it could work for one, it couldn't work for the other. But I do think it's like a roller coaster. It's the twists and the turns. Right now, getting recruited, if your goal, hopefully it's your kid's goal, and then you're just supporting the kid's goal. But if your son or daughter's goal is to play a college sport, I don't think there's anyone that's immune to it right now. There might be some sports that are a little less impacted by this kind of downward pressure where everybody's transferring and then D1 to D3, and I'd rather take D1 retread who's been in the college environment for 2 years, who knows what it's like to have temptations of college, and they're just 225 pounds as opposed to a kid I got to get in a weight room who's got to gain 40 pounds. That was not something that you and I had to go through, but it's real. Whether you want to lean into it or not, that is about as real deal as it can get. So even like that makes so much more sense from your freshman, sophomore year to do that now than it ever has. I don't know if it made sense 10 years ago. I have no idea. I would probably say probably not. Mm-hmm. But as you and I sit here and use this technology, which didn't probably exist 10 years, I don't even know when Zoom came out or when, all this stuff, podcast, whatever it is. It's different now. Like you're just not really recruitable. There are the Twitter kids. But those are the best kids who have been the best kids for the history of time. There's just kids that are there's just boys and girls who are just so much better than everybody else. And I've fortunately seen them. I'm not one of them. There's a lot of people in this Philadelphia area. There's so many great athletes, but there's not like millions of them. There's not thousands of them. There's probably not even hundreds of them. But there's a lot more hundreds and thousands and millions around the country that are really solid athletes that if they invest in their time, they can do it. It's like I kind of equate it with like education with my kids. It's like my son loves math. He's pretty good at math. But there's kids that are way better at math than he is. But math homework he knocks out. Doesn't really love science. But like I'm looking at his thing. I'm actually in his closet doing this interview. But he's got it. Like I want to, I will try harder at science. I mean, it was like Dear Mom and Dad, or this like back to school thing, which is really cool. But it's like but that's not the same as investing in like Tommy would much rather play baseball games than work on fielding and go to a weight room and work on base running and do all these other things. But like the reality is, if he wants to get better at it, it's like those parts are like his science, right? Whereas math is just like showing up and playing. Like in school, once again, in 30 years, school could become irrelevant. We have no idea. Where like they identify that Gene's really good at this, so we're gonna pretty much pour everything into that, and then you'll just learn some other stuff. I have no idea. Maybe I'm on to something, but like until that happens, Tommy has to work on science. Like you have to. Like you have to be a complete person. Do I think if he doesn't end up doing that, he's gonna fall off the face of the earth? No, but we're going to study it. We're going to try to get better at it. We're trying to learn because it's like his cross-country experience where it's not his greatest thing, but it's like, hey, man, like there is some satisfaction when he comes home and he gets a 90 on a science test. He is over the moon. When he gets a 90 on math, it's like, or it's like, it's okay. Or if he ever got like an 80 on math, he'd be like apoplectic. Whereas 80 to 90 on science last year, like you're like, dude, you're rocking it. Like you're working at it. You're like, you know what I mean? So there's and I think celebrating those will help him. Hopefully, like I mean, I didn't go to class with him when I would try harder at science. I just said, hey man, like this is a hard thing you got to get over. Let's like try to work at it. So I try to personally, I try to do it. My wife and I, we try to do it. Is like, not science is not the end of the world, but it is important. So and like getting better at things that you're not good at in the sport that you're at, it's not the end of the world, but it is important. Like you need to work at being not only the physical stuff, like being a better teammate, having less meltdowns. Like my son, he's high strung like me, gets emotional, and when things don't go his way. But it's like we talk about. That's all I talk about on the car ride home. I don't care if you get hits. Is like you ran through first base. You got to control your you got to control your energy. You got to control your being upset, because if you make a play in the infield and you throw a kid out, like he can tell you this if we ever did an antidote to this. Did the kid who ran through first base after you threw him out like have a a meltdown? No, he just went back to the dugout, and he's probably just as upset as you are.
Yeah.
So it's just all these different things. So it's attitude, it's effort, and you mentioned Coach Wright before, Taylor, who coaches with us at Episcopal. Their mantra is attitude. I mean, he wrote a book about it, but it's basically one of the biggest things you can control is your attitude. But that attitude is like my attitude towards being a good teammate, my attitude towards the weight room, my attitude towards the drill that I hate. Like I want to hit, I don't want to field all day, but like the attitude towards working on your hips for being an outfielder. Like our outfield, I'm so proud of. I'm an outfielder, so they're so much better outfielders than I was because they pay attention to the little details that I learned in college, and they're so good. And like, and we have kids that have never played outfield. By the end of the year, end up being like, and they go in the summer and they play outfield and they do it really well. And it's like this weird thing where it's not about hitting. It's like I made all these plays. I can throw guys out. My crow hop's better, and like I know when we do those drills. I know it, and I would do the same thing when I was in high school. It's like, this stinks. But you know what? We've gotten kids who have, like, they know it stinks, but they've known how much it's gotten them better, so they're the leaders now. And then those freshmen and sophomores who are like, well, dude, if Reggie King can do this, who works his butt off more than anybody on the team, like, we're doing it. You know what I mean? Like, if this infielder does this, or this, Roman Ataro pitching for the Episcopal thing, he's doing all these dry pitching drills, and he's getting after it, and he's sweating, like, the least I can do is do that. So, to put a bow on that, as a philosophy is for a high school coach, for parents and players, is my goal, what I tell the kids is, I want this to be a player-led team. Player-led teams are way more successful, have way more fun, have way more everything, have way more memories, have way more relationships than a coach-led team. And we are every year getting better and better where the players are taking ownership of, and it's not me wiping my hands clean and being like, you lost the game. It doesn't even matter. Never say, don't go home and say, we won a game. It's just like, it was a great effort, awesome stuff. But the player led, and that's kind of that whole thing about the practice, the Reggie Kings, getting after it in the drills, the Spencer Shoes in the infield. I mean, I could go on all the kids, not to slight anybody who's not on that list. But there's something about, them taking ownership of the not so sexy stuff that it just breeds through. So the impact point is like I have coaches that are impactful in my life for sure. I have players that I play with that are super impactful, and my hope is that the kids at Episcopal, the ones that I am in charge of, they have hopefully I'm impactful for them. Hopefully I know I'm not going to be 100%, probably not even close, but I hope that they have buddies on the team that are way more impactful. Where it's like, man, that's leadership. Like peer to peer, that's true leadership. Where you're like, you put yourself out there, you're probably going to get made fun of. They're going to be like, oh, you're a coach's pet, you're a teacher's pet, and it's like once you get through that, and you realize like they're just saying that, and I'm guilty of it too. It's like you're helping more than you probably will ever imagine, or you'll imagine or understand, much later in life. But it's super impactful now.
I think before my last question, the really good thing about that too, though, is hopefully the parents and kids trust you. I think a really big part of what you should look for, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in a high school or college program, it's just like good quality coaches who have been there, because you could find coaches who maybe preach these things and you want to follow them, but if they, not that you have to play at a certain level, but if you haven't experienced that or had good kids that you've coached that have gone on to like a certain level beyond that, I think that's one thing for parents to look out for is, yes, your kids are going to be spending a lot of time with this person, so have they been there? Do they know what they're talking about? Can you trust them? And then at that point, have your kid buy in and be in a coach's spec, because if you follow someone like you, not that you're going to all play college pro, but like you'll most likely get in line with what you should be doing. I'm sure for, maybe not as much for high school, college, probably a lot of travel teams. I don't know, maybe a guess, but that have coaches that are just there for the summer, just there for a buck, volunteers who aren't as good, and that's fine. But like, they don't have the experience that someone like you does. So I think being very careful about who your kids are spending their time with, both their peers and their coaches, can play a big factor in it too. But
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's just and it's like the human element is kind of, I think, sometimes not accounted for as much as like we can talk. Like I can talk if you're one of the kids I coach. Like I can talk to you about baseball the whole time. But the reality is like we're not going to talk every minute about baseball. So it's like how's school? And I'm trying to do a better job of that every year. It's like what are you into? Like what pushes your buttons? Like what do you think you're going to do in college? What do you want to do as a young adult? Like and I'm fortunate at Episcopal. These kids are super smart, super motivated, and they kind of have probably a better idea earlier than most kids, or maybe I think kids in general actually have a little bit better idea than at least I did when I was their age. And to your point is summer ball, it's you're getting, and it's nothing against it, you're getting probably a lot of college kids who are coming back, and there is something super special about that because those are kids that are they got to make a little bit of money, but like they're baseball guys, so there is. In our case, there's an element to that is super impactful. It's like this guy's giving up his free time, his free time, and there's some inherent value in that, obviously. And then coupling it, I think it's just being open to having a lot of supplemental people in your life, sports wise and personally, quote unquote, professionally, to offset. And I think that's a big thing. It's like I learned how to do things from coaches, how to not do things from coaches. How kids that I've coached who resist and they say, hey, this is why I resisted. It's like, all right, that makes a little bit of sense. Like I'll try to change for you, not for you now because you're already gone, but like for the next wave of guys. And I think that's just humble yourself to realize that I don't do not even close, but we're trying, and I'm calling different people and using different mentors, and you got to be willing to somebody to tell you you're not doing a good job or you got to do a better job. And then I think if you levelize with the kids that you coach on that front, I mean, we're all human. You know what I mean? Like we all make mistakes and we all do this stuff. And same thing with parents. It's like I might give you the wrong advice now, and if I do, you don't owe me the opportunity to make it right. But like I'll try to make it right, or if I made it wrong for you, I'll try to do it better the next time. But it's the feedback, and as long as hopefully it comes from a good place, there's obviously that respect there.
Sure. And maybe the last question, Tom. We kind of touched on it, but I feel like it's such an important one, especially for baseball, but in today's sports world in general. When you talk about like the overusage, probably a bad word, but the realization of data. Like kids nowadays, they know, like you mentioned, they know their average, they know their throwing speed at a super young age. How do you help young athletes balance that when they get into high school, when those numbers, they do matter, but you have the perspective, and so do I, that back in the day that didn't even matter and you can still become a really good player? Like what can you do to make sure that a kid's not totally just obsessing over the data and the numbers and getting lost in that when the actual game is being played and there's things they can do to help the team win or just be a good team player?
Yeah, so this could get me in trouble, but so we have software at Episcopal that we can use. We rarely use it though. There's two things. I'm not against it because it is what it is. But I think there's a time and place where, like, when I was in college, I can speak to myself. So like that's hopefully I'll get myself in less trouble. Like when I was in college, I had a better understanding of who I was as a baseball player. I understood like what pitch I wanted to hit, what counts I would want to get into. If this pitcher threw XYZ pitch, I knew that like I couldn't wait to get to two strikes. Like it was like kind of burn the bridges and try to go after it early. The longer I got into it at bat, like, but that's because I was 20, 21, 22, and I was just like living, breathing it. Mm-hmm. I think at high school, yeah, sure, you probably have, and this kind of goes back to the really good kid. You probably have a couple kids a year that could take in all those data points and not have it just totally submerge them. But I'm coaching a high school baseball team at large.
Yeah.
I don't want the kid who's not ready for it to be inundated with it. And furthermore, I'm fully aware that they're getting inundated with it somewhere else. So it's like, all right, I'll be the guy who doesn't inundate you. So I think it's worked out for us where it's like we almost are like like I said, prior to this year, I never shared the team statistics with the team once, 0 times. So Like never. So people, and I'm sure people listen to this and be like, "This guy is an idiot." Like, and I'll be like, "That's fine." Like, and I don't know. It's. I think it's worked. Some years it's worked better than others, but I think there's a time and a place for everything. I mean, the things that make me, and it's nothing against the kids. It's nothing against the guys and gals that are doing the lessons. It's all part of it. It's like you're using technology. It can obviously be used for good. But I see these videos sometimes where the kids, they're swinging, and as they finish, like the left-handed swing, like I'm a lefty, but there's the video monitor on the side of the workout facility, and as they're swinging, they're just craning their neck to immediately see how far they hit the ball and how hard they hit the ball.
Jeez.
So my thing is, I always joke with the guys, I'm always like, those are the kids I want to throw to, because it's like, if that kid's pulling his head out, I'm like, we're just throwing, look the other half, and we're gonna throw all speed pitch, and that's obviously a dumb baseball joke, but and yes, if you hit the ball 350 feet as a 14-year-old, that is a bomb. But the reality is, if you go out to a baseball field and you hit it 350 feet, you knew you hit it 350 feet. Like, I don't care, in my opinion, I don't care how hard I hit it. I just know that I hit it really hard. You know what I mean? Like, in order to hit a ball that far with that much carry to go that place, it went really, really far. It went really far. But then there's the other argument where other teams I know in the area, and they have the technology. They put the bat on there. They can track how many swings that Gene took on Tuesday. It'll tell you his exit velocity, his launch angle. But my thing is, right, wrong, or indifferent is, if they did that, I'm not going to say that's bad work. Like, you're doing work. Like, you're doing good, conscious work.
Trying.
But I think, specifically on the hitting side, the pitching side's a little bit different, because you can, like, play with the pitch grips, and I think that's probably a longer form conversation. I'm more into that. Yeah, velocity is one thing, but, like, the difference in off-speed pitches versus your fastballs, having guys off those pitches, I think there's unbelievable value there. And then just seeing rotational points and things like that. I know, obviously, the big thing is, the thing that jumps out is the fastball speed. Yeah. So I'm not, I want the guy who can throw 3 pitches for strikes. Yes, if there's a little bit margin where you can go up a tick on the pitching side. But I think guys that pitch for long throw multiple pitches for strikes.
Yep.
People can argue, but you're not going to get to the big leagues unless you throw this much. All right, we could debate. That's like the beauty of sports, is you can debate that Jalen Hurts stinks or he doesn't stink. I think Jalen Hurts is the best. But people say he can't do anything. But, like, that's the beauty of sports. Whereas this topic, I think, is just kind of a debatable thing. It's a little bit. It's not going to be on sports, 610 WIP, 94, because it's high school baseball and college baseball, and it's very nuanced. But I think there's a time and place where us personally, we use it. We don't use it a lot. I could be persuaded maybe a little bit to use it a little bit more. And I'm, like, always, looking stuff up. I'm trying to grow. But I think for a high school baseball player, and for a high school baseball player on a large team, and for me personally who coaches high school baseball players on a large thing, I don't think it helps. I think it doesn't help me enough where I'm going to spend a lot of my time doing that.
Yep.
Like, if you hit a bunch of doubles and you steal a lot of bases, you're probably fast, and you're probably a pretty good hitter. And if you're not really fast, then you're a really good base runner. And then I would say to you, hey, Gene, you go to the trainer at Episcopal. He's got a running program for you. I'm going to introduce you to the track coach. He's going to teach you how to form. I mean, I do this all the time. Like, he's going to teach you how to be a better form runner, because clearly you're not as fast as Gene, but you steal more bases than Gene because you're a better base stealer than Gene is.
Yep.
So I was never the fastest. I can speak for myself. I was never the fastest. I wasn't slow, but I had a good jump. I could go first to third because I could turn inside the bases. So I'd rather spend more time on those variables than just stare at a thing and say, well, Gene runs. And don't get me wrong, there's an argument where it's, this kid runs a 6'5", so he's going to be in this Division I bucket, whereas if you run a 7'2", it's going to be really hard to fall into that Division I bucket unless you hit really hard. So it's, once again, long-form conversation, but it's more being open to having it's kind of what we're talking about now, is like being open to having the conversation.
Yeah.
Being open to say, hey, like, if you're going to go all in on being a 7'2" runner, like, you got to gain weight and you got to hit for power. If you don't ever, if you're not looking to get to 6'7", you can't hit singles because you're base to base guy. Base to base guys have to hit 300 to 400 because that's the only way you're going to stay in the lineup. If you hit singles and you hit 220, like,
Yeah.
See you later. Like that's, but it's, but if you want to do that, like let's have a conversation around it. And if you get to 220 or 215 and you're mashing, I don't care if you run I personally don't care if you run a 7-2. Like you're gonna hit doubles and you're gonna hit home runs and you're gonna be a dude. And like when there's guys up at third base with less than 2 outs, like you'll probably be a sacrifice fly guy. Like those guys help win baseball games. So
yeah.
I like technology. I think it's there's so much of it, but I think to kind of hopefully put a little bit of a bow on it is, yeah, as a supplement, I won't be the guy that I won't be that guy for you necessarily. But if you want to get to that guy, I know plenty of guys that can do. Yeah, I know plenty of guys that offer those services who I trust, and I don't think they're doing it the wrong way. So yeah, I just think using the network and supplementation of skills drills and mental side, physical side, metric side. I think if you're with the right people, they're going to consciously try to help you out. I'm not going to keep you from somebody else for my own personal gain. I want you to be a better baseball player. I want you to be a better kid and all that stuff.
I love that hybrid nature. So it sounds like you would use the numbers if you have to have a conversation with the kid to really say, like, do you want to play or not? Like, this is what it is, but you're not going to let kids like pour over it every single at bat, every single day, attach it to a bat. That's crazy to me. I stopped playing baseball way before the data world got into it, but the fact that you can tag that on a bat just to see how many swings the kid takes, it's like, I mean, that's insane. Like, just let it.
It's a little bit, yeah. It's a little big brother for me.
Yeah,
it's a big brother for me. But once again, like our program specifically, I don't think that would work because we have kids that play all these multiple sports, multiple positions. If I went to college, maybe I do that because it's like, all right, I at least know that Gene wasn't out last, or me. It's probably I wasn't out last night. And I was hitting at 7. I mean, I think you can track like what time it had. Like once again, and technology is great, but I think for what we're dealing with, I think all the outside pressures. I'm pretty cognizant of that. Like I just think like I was a shy. I'm outgoing with the people I'm with. You can put me in a room and I'm fine. I can navigate it. But even so, like I have angst a lot. So I think just understanding that there's probably a lot of that there, whether you can hide it or mask it.
Yeah.
Well, which I would say I'm not like super like I definitely don't like when people are like, oh, you're really good at that. Like it's not my deal. I think it's the same for like if you hit 80 miles per hour exit velocity, like. But I hit 90, but you get like it's going to make you feel some sort of way. And if you do that constantly in these like public forums, yeah, sure, it could motivate some, but I think it also could deter others or humiliate others. So I just say, hey, let's just get after it together. Like if you really want to, you can stay after practice. I can put a gun on you. You can see what the numbers are. We can do all this stuff. It's just I think in the big program, big team stuff, I try to not make that the focal point.
But Tom, I know you've given such good feedback. I got to ask one more quick question because I think a lot of parents and athletes probably want to know this, especially baseball nowadays. If you're working with a 10, 11, 12-year-old, I know you're starting to do group lessons you mentioned before we hopped on. What's one drill or one tip you would have at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, a young baseball player do nowadays? Is it always like grab a tee, go get 100 swings and do that, or grab like a hit away and work by yourself? Like for parents and kids who don't have access to travel teams and like high level trainers, what's one thing they can do to just become a better baseball player with mom and dad or just by themselves?
For me, ground balls and fly balls. So on the fielding side, so it's as simple as if you got blacktop, you got a backyard, you got a driveway, whatever. Just find an open space. Just roll the baseball. You don't even have to be a baseball player. Like, I can use a fungo. You don't need to use a fungo. I can use a bat. You don't need to use a bat. Just roll the baseball. And then once they get that and the hang of it, then like add, you got to get into the throwing position, all those different things. Just any little thing, because it's like you got to, it's one thing to field a ball, but then you got to field it, you got to grip it, you got to throw it, and you got to throw it accurately. Like, the devil's in the details. Fly ball for those kids is just, it's hard. They don't get them a lot, so just throw it in the air, just simple stuff like that. And then the hitting side of things, if you don't have a lot of space, they have these like heavy weighted balls now. Okay. So like I can throw weighted balls, they go 10, 15 feet at that age, so you don't have to worry about space. That just gives you good feedback because if you don't hit the middle of the the way the ball just kind of spins and rotates and it doesn't go anywhere. You don't yell at them. You just say, hey, try to hit the middle of the ball. Then and they're getting resistance, so you gotta go through with that. I hated tee work, candidly, until I got to college. I just thought it was just like a complete waste of time. Somebody should sponsor me. I love tee work. Not only do I like tee work, I like tee work that is, focused on doing it the right way. So it's
purposeful.
Like, hey, I want to try to hit the ball the other way. So you gotta think like, well, I'm going to go to the ball, I'm going to hit the other way. But it's not like the ball wants to carry to the other way. Like, all right, I want to hit the ball back up the middle. I want to hit the ball to the pull side. I want to be able to hit a high pitch where I'm not hitting completely under it, but I want to hit the bottom of the baseball, middle bottom of the baseball, and try to drive through. I want to hit it on the low pitch. So it's just taking, and once again, hopefully people will listen to this. Hopefully a lot of people will listen to this. But it's just call somebody you trust. Call Gene and say, hey, this is Tom Grandieri. Can I get his phone number? Can I borrow his time for 5 minutes? Like, baseball people, sports people want to help sports people. If you become a nuisance, maybe not. But if you're just trying to, hey, I'm trying to go out with my son or daughter and I'm trying to do X, Y, Z. I've never met a guy in the baseball world who's like, scram. So try to do that. But I think the field hockey coach at Episcopal said about his dad, I don't know anything about field hockey. Don't know anything about the sport. I Googled it. They told me how many girls are on the field, boys are on the field. It's a big male sport in European countries, so I know enough to like have a conversation about it. But he was like, get a wall, get yourself, try to get the ball on the stick, and there's no substitute for just like where the stick becomes more comfortable in your hands. For me, it becomes more comfortable in your glove. And for kids that are a little bit younger than that, that is just, let's just see if they love it. Let's just see if they want to play it. If it's a sport that they want to play the next season. I know a big apprehension for like 6, 7, 8-year-olds is balls above your head, fly balls, anything in the air, because they're just scared of it.
Yep.
So we do, when I used to do with my son and daughter, and I do it now, is like, go to Five Below or go anywhere and a little like kickball, not even a kickball, the lighter ones, just a little blow up ball.
Yep.
And you just throw the ball in the air and you just tell them to head the ball. So they just get used to like using their eyes to see something above their head. And then you can start to introduce like where it's like you head it, you could put a helmet on them. If you want to introduce like a tennis ball, so they wear a helmet, you could throw a tennis ball, you can tell them to head it with their helmet on. And it's just, so they get comfortable. And I learned all this stuff from, other people and different drills, but it's just anything you can do to kind of just keep the ball, moving, keep the ball rolling forward.
Yeah.
Like I see it now, like, we have a 10-year-old fall ball baseball team that I'm coaching, which is like, I guess, AAU light. It's my first foray into it. And, I catch myself where it's like, I don't know, my expectations aren't high, but it's like you just get into it and you're into it. And, like, we have first basemen, and they don't even know what a stretch is. And, like, instead of being like, you're 10 years old, you don't know what a stretch is, I don't think I knew what a stretch was when I was 10 years old. I just, like, try to catch the ball. So we're like, we just work on, like, hey, just put your one foot on the base. When you see it, then you reach out. So I think it's just having grace and realizing, like, yeah, we're the adults. Like, I know what a stretch is. Like, great. Like, even if I don't play baseball. But it's like, they'll pick up on it. And if their first and I'm not perfect, I yell, I'm guilty of this. But, like, if their first foray into it is like, hey, I'm just trying to help.
Yeah.
Like, let's just, like, and I tell the kids all the time, like, I didn't do base leads until I was 13 years old. Like, I didn't have to worry about a pickoff till I was 13. You are 10. 3 years. That's like almost 1,000. It's over 1,000 days.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to like your expectation. Like, I'm sure you're nervous about it. I was like, I'm more nervous about this because you're gonna fail. You're gonna feel bad, which is gonna make me feel bad. So I was like, let's just understand that if something goes bad, just I'll try to teach you it. If we don't learn it today, it's on me. It's totally my fault. We'll try to practice. So I think like just have some fun with it. Don't take it too seriously. And hopefully they'll end up liking whatever sport it is, and they'll continue to do it, and hopefully they play as many sports as they can until they say, "Hey, mom or dad," or I really love this sport, I want to play the other one, but like my free time, I'd rather focus on this. Like instead of, I think that's hopefully the healthiest way. And once again, my son could do the complete opposite, and I could be a complete hypocrite. But I think that to me seems like the most logical way to get to the next steps and go from. I'm a big believer in going from A to B to C to D, and that might just be my personality. I don't really jump into things quickly, so I might not be the best right away, and I might not ever be the best, but I'll usually get better as time goes on. And I think that felt fulfilling for me. And as a coach, I think I'm getting fulfillment of that, but I'm getting fulfillment because I believe, or I feel like I see it and feel it on the other side, which, is really cool. That's why I coach.
And I think parents can see that too, though. I mean, if they take the simple little steps, and I love the fly ball aspect, it's probably even easier than, because if you have young kids, I'm thinking if they have a bat and they hit their brother or sister when they're like 5 or 6. I have 2 boys under 2, so I know it's going to happen one day. Someone's hitting someone in the head. But like fly ball, light ball, not heavy, get their eye movement down. She's like, that builds athleticism too. So it's the little stuff you can do. You don't have to, buy a pitching machine, or for basketball, like buy a shooting machine. You can just literally throw a ball and, build it. Great athletes have been built that way. I think nowadays parents forget that because there's so much out there, but like the simple stuff does work. So.
Yeah, the joke I make about that, we don't have one, and maybe we'll get, once again, like we might get one, but the rollback for the basketball, I always joke with my son, and like I said, I'm not like the easiest guy, but I'm like, he's like, if he airballs it, he has to go to the neighbors, and walk and run and go to the neighbors and get the ball.
Crazy.
And he's like, why don't we get one of these things? And I was like, just don't airball the ball. And like, so, you know what I mean? Like, you might want to become a better shooter because you're tired of chasing the ball, and it's like the ball hits the thing and goes down to the driveway, and it's like, and it goes into the street. Mind you, I don't love that because it's the street element, but it's like, I don't know, man. Like, try to make more shots so you're not running down, to the end of the street. But yeah, I think any little thing you can do, and I will say, and I'm guilty of doing it the wrong way sometimes, but is ask if they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Try again the next day. And if they don't want to do it again, try again the next day. And if they don't want to do it, at some point they might want to do it. They might want to do it. Like, my son loves soccer. He fell out of love with soccer, and now he's getting back into it. And it's like, I have no idea why that happened. So it's just, hey, want to go kick the soccer ball in the backyard? He's like, yeah. He's like, can you get me goalie gloves? I'm like, sure, I'll get you goalie gloves. So like, I'll kick the ball and he'll play goalie, and then eventually he'll get tired of that and he'll kick it, and he plays CYO soccer and runs around with his buddies. But I think there's an element to CYO soccer that'll probably help him in basketball and baseball. It's like, he's playing against 5th and 6th grade boys and girls who are bigger than him that are knocking him down. And I'm like, that's going to happen in basketball. So it's like, I don't know. I just think there's just something about just getting out there, not having the highest expectations in every situation, and just try to have fun. Obviously, but I think fun comes from hard work. I think also fun comes from winning. I tell that to 10-year-old kids too. I'm not going to shy away from that. But have fun. But I think fun is more of a byproduct of the hard work and the being a good teammate and get after and a little bit of focus. But have fun and go out and play, because you're like us. Like, I'm so washed up now that I love sports, but like, I miss the days where I'm now, when he's playing soccer, I'm like at the games and I bring a ball and I try to like juggle. It's like I'm a loser, but like I don't know. It was you remember, like, I don't know if you ever played soccer, but like, it was so cool to like juggle 12 times or 15 times, and now it's like, I don't know, it comes and it goes, and it's all over. So I love sports. I love all sports. I love sports that I know nothing about. And I think in any sport that you play, you'll find people who absolutely love that sport, and those are the people, even if they don't know the most, those are the people that I would gravitate towards, because there's like something about it that you can't fake just unadulterated love for like something, right? Yeah, and if it's sports, it's like, that person loves baseball, man. Like, I'll hang out with you all day, even if you don't really know much about it, and then hopefully your kids will gravitate towards that and go from there.
That's awesome feedback, Tom. Honestly, man, between obviously the hitting stuff and the tips for baseball one-off, but like the parenting advice, the high school advice, the recruiting advice, I think there's a ton for parents and athletes to chew on here. So I'm super pumped to get this one out. I think we have a lot of good feedback the community can get from this. So appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.